Hi, Dave Scotland for cgswat.com, and welcome to another tutorial. Basically what I've got here is a very simple scene with the Earth here in the foreground, a bit of a moon in the background, some stars. Now it is a simple scene, and there's plenty of tutorials out there for how to build the Earth in 3D and all this sort of stuff. But I wanted to show you a technique. You may notice here that we have the night-day terminator sort of moving through the image here, or positioned sort of central to the globe. And on the right-hand side we've got a day lighting scenario on the planet. But on the left-hand side we have a night lighting scenario with the various cities in their lit artificial sort of man-made lighting scenario on the left-hand side here. And what I've actually done to create that effect is used a specific map type, material type in 3D Studio Max called a fall-off material. And we'll go into more detail with that in a moment. But basically, using this fall-off material, the effect itself is driven by where you put your key light. And in this instance, the key light is representing the sun. And so wherever I move that sun or rotate the planet relative to the light, whatever's lit is going to show up as a day-lit Earth globe here, but wherever's in shadow is going to show up as a night-lit Earth globe here. So let's go ahead and start this effect. It's a pretty simple process, and then after we've built this in 3D, we'll render out some passes and put it into After Effects and show you how to quickly composite this up together. So here we are in 3D Studio Max. It's just a standard interface that we're looking at the moment, top, front, left, and a perspective. And so what we're going to do in the top view is we're going to create a geosphere, and that's in the Create panel here. And we want the Geometry tab, and we're just going to click on the geosphere, and from the center we're just going to draw it out, and we'll draw it out a little bit, and then come into the Modify panel, and we're just going to double click on the radius, and we'll punch in 200. And in this instance it's 200 centimeters, but you know, it could be 200 miles and 2,000 miles. Be careful of your scale. If you go too large, Max will start to, remember that when you start to light these things and do various functions within a 3D environment, the scale starts to have a bearing, and you don't want to go too large with, as long as everything's relative to one another, it'll all look fine in the camera. So I mean, that's an 8-hour tutorial in itself, is sort of scale within a 3D world. But just trust me for now. We'll just go with 200 centimeters there. We're going to up the segment amount just so that we get a little bit smoother surface, and we'll go with 12. Nice even number. We're going to come out a little bit here on perspective, and what I might do is just maximize that viewport, that perspective viewport, and I'll dial down this color swatch a little bit, and we're going to hit M to bring up our material editor. So there's our material editor there. Just give ourselves a little bit of space, and I'm just going to move this over here. What we're going to do first, we'll just rename the geosphere, and we might even just hit F to go to a front view for that, and then bring up a shaded mode. So we're just in a pure front view, and we're going to rename our geosphere Earth. And in fact, we'll just slide the material editor out of the road here for a moment. We're just going to set up a little bit more in the scene. Now I'm in a top view. I've just hit T to switch to top view, and I'm going to create a light. Now this is our key light. It's going to represent the sun. So if you click on your lights tab here in the creation panel, and we'll go standard lighting, we're going to go a target direct. And I think if we just stay out here on the right hand side as a top view, and we're going to come over and just drag the target to the center, and then we're just going to go into the modify for the light. We'll leave it, we might put it at 1.1 for multiplier. We're going to hit the color swatch there, and we're just going to drag it out of white so that it's not pure white. We're just going to give a hint of yellow. Never use pure white or pure black for anything in art. You know, there are very few times where you'll need to use pure white, and the ultimate specular highlight on objects is probably the only reason, but a good enough reason not to ever use it is that once you've gone white, you can't go brighter. And so if you ever have a need to go a little bit brighter with something, and you've gone white already, you can't go any brighter. So it's always good to sort of not use white and not use pure black. So in a color scenario, that is. Now with a masking scenario, that doesn't apply. So we've got our light here. We're just going to change the name of it. Let's call it Sun, and let's give it some we'll give it some shadow parameters. We're going to go ray traced shadows. I just want to make sure that my renderer is the default scanline renderer, and it's not. It's actually set up for V-Ray, so we're just going to switch back to the default scanline renderer in case anyone or in case you have V-Ray. We won't be using V-Ray for this tutorial. And while we're in here, we might as well just up the resolution a little bit here. Just lock the image aspect and the pixel aspect, and let's just kick it up. Let's kick it up to 720 for now. It's just going to give us a little bit more size in the viewport when we do a render, and we'll be able to have a look at it a little bit clearer. So that should be enough in our render settings. And in our light settings, what we want to do is bring it down to directional parameters. I want to click on the overshoot, which basically means that the light is going to keep shooting. It doesn't really matter where the light is in 3D space. Even if I had an object, I'll show you an example here. If I render this from the top, you'll see that it's lit there from the side. But then if I move this behind the light and render it, because I've clicked overshoot, it still is lit. But if I untick overshoot and render it, the sphere is not illuminated. It's still in the scene because we can check the alpha and it's still in the scene. So overshoot just means that the light, the direction, it takes the direction information from the light, but it basically continues shooting it as if this light was way off further back in this direction to infinity, basically. So let's reset this back to the center. I did that by right clicking on these twirlies down here on the bottom. So there's our sun. What we need to do is bring our fall off out. Let's bring our fall off. I'll just untick overshoot for a moment and just bring the inner fall off out a little bit. It's just something I like to get in the habit of. It gives me a good idea of what it's focused on. And then switch overshoot back on there, and we'll give that a quick render, and yet we're getting a nice half of the sphere rendered. And the next thing we need to do, let's just go to a front view and then hit P for perspective. Now you'll see where the light is. Let's just arc around a little bit. Let's zoom in a little bit, probably to about there, and we're in perspective view. And what we want to do is just say views and create camera from view. And what that just basically means is we've created a camera from the view that we were just looking at in a perspective view. And what we'll do is just grab our target, and then once again just right click on the twirly arrows to reset it to the center of the 3D world, 0, 0, 0 here. So there's our and now what we can do in that camera view is zoom in and out. We can arc around. We can do all sorts of things. Okay, it's time to attack these materials now. So let's just go back to a front view. Hit F, and we'll come in here. Hit G to get rid of the grid, and might just hide the camera for now. And we'll come in here a little bit, and we'll bring up our material editor. M is the hotkey for material editor. And what we're going to do is first we'll create the lit or day Earth map. Now what I'm actually using for these maps is completely free and available from the NASA website, and I haven't got the link with me at the moment, but I'll try to include it in the text that goes along with the tutorial. But I definitely will include these maps in the tutorial download for this tutorial, because they are in the public domain. They are free to use. So what we have here, we've got Earth clouds. Notice that they're 2500 by 1250, so they're quite large maps, which is what we need to give us more options with our camera. It means we can go in quite close. So we've got our Earth clouds, and this is just basically clouds. Black being no clouds, white being clouds. We've got our elevation, black being sea level, and then white being the highest levels. And you can see here you've got your Andes, your Rockies, the Himalayas here, and so you can get a fair idea of how the elevation map works. And we have our Earth map, and this is our color Earth map. And we also have our Earth night map, which is a complete replica but with our cities all sort of lit up. And this is a map I created myself based on the Earth elevation. I just selected all the black areas, which is sea level, and created a specularity map. And basically what this means is when the sun hits the planet, we're going to get some specular highlight on the oceans but not on the continents. So the black we won't get specularity, but the white we will, and that'll become apparent when we do that map. Another map there also available from NASA is a moon surface map, and then I've just got some stars. I don't end up using the stars. We'll use just a fractal noise trick in After Effects to create the stars. So they're the maps that I'll be using. And the first map that we want to bring into our material, let's rename our material Earth Day. And let's bring in, click on the diffuse swatch here, and it brings up our map browser, material browser. And we want to click on our bitmap, and we want to navigate to our Earth maps, and we'll click on the color map, which is this Earth map Atmos. And we'll open that, and let's go ahead and apply that just temporarily to our object, and we'll give that a quick render. So it's looking fine there. We're not getting any pinching or skewing. The mapping on the object should be fine. Just the normal generate mapping coordinates for the sphere is fine. And what we're going to do now is I might just change the diffuse swatch to something a little more meaningful. Just a green color there. It doesn't really matter. So the next thing we need to do is set up that specular map that I was talking about before. So let's click on the specular level down here in the maps section, and then click on the map button, and we'll go bitmap and highlight that spec map and go OK. And you'll notice if we render that the continents don't have any specularity, don't have any shininess, but the oceans do. So now that that map is in place, just before we move on, I'm just going to take off the filtering. Filtering means that it's adapting a little bit of blur, a little bit of video type filter to the map itself before applying it to the geometry, and we want to leave the map pristine in its current state. And we might as well just knock the blur back to 0 as well. And okay, so that's our map for specular. Now what we can do is also, and if I just bring up the map itself, we just want to bring up the glossiness of the map, something like that, so that it's a little bit more glossy. Remember that it is sort of the surface of water, and that's going to do it. And then we'll just bring the specular level in the maps, just bring that down a little bit. Well, about 95 is going to do it. And that's probably all we need to do for the specular. Now what we need to do is we need to give this ocean surface some sort of meaningful texture that is representative of an ocean that has a bump texture to it. So we're going to use bump. We're going to click on the bump and highlight or click on the map, and we're going to use noise. So if we click on noise, you'll notice we immediately have this noise pattern which is much too large. So let's ramp it down. Let's try just 1 for now and see what that looks like. And that's given us quite a lot of noise there. And if I just slide in a little closer to our geometry in the scene, that's given us that noise in the viewport there. And that's quite okay for now. I think that's probably about the size that we want the noise, but the bump setting is a little bit high in the map, and I'll show you how to bring that down. So just noise type regular and size of 1. We'll come back up one step to the maps here, and what we're going to do is scale down the amount. We just want that to be about 5. We'll give that another render, and you'll see that it's just a very subtle amount now. And we could probably bring our glossiness up just slightly, bring it up to about 50, and I think that's going to work nicely. I do like the highlight to be a little bit wider. Well, that's probably okay. It's not going. The effect itself isn't going to be as harsh as that once we get our other mapping elements onto the geometry. Okay, so we have our bump there, and what we're going to do also is we're going to use the elevation map as a displacement map, just to give us a bit of elevation in the mountain ranges and things like that. And so if I just grab our object here, I'm just going to move it around so that South America is just on the edge here. And if I give that a render, you'll see that there's no real elevation throughout that mountain range there. So what we're going to do is click on displacement in the map, give it a map of an amount of 1, or let's make it 2, and then click on the map, bring up the bitmap and do the elevation bitmap. Once again, we'll get rid of the blur and take the filtering off, and we'll see what that looks like now. And it's very subtle. I'll ramp it up and show you a little bit more. Ramp it up to 13. It's a very subtle effect, but when shadows from the clouds start to fall, once we have our cloud layer, it will become more apparent. Let's bring that back down to let's bring it down to 2 for now. And that looks like that's all we need for the Earth map. Now what we're going to do is just grab the swatch here and click and drag to the next available swatch, and we're going to change its name to Night, Earth Night. And what we'll do is we'll darken down the swatch so that at a glance we'll know that it's the night. And we need to make some changes here now to the maps. Now the diffuse map, we'll click on it, and that takes us into the bitmap parameters here. We'll just click on the bitmap itself and change that to the night map. And then we'll come out. We might just take off the filtering in there as well. And if it's in there, there's a good chance it's in here. So in the day map, let's just take off the filtering and knock the blur back. So we'll go back to our night map here, and I might just apply it to our geometry so we can see what we're doing. And if I give that a render, you'll see that we have our night city lights there. Now one thing we don't need on the night side is specularity, because there is only one light source out in our solar system, and that's the sun. So it will be shining, it won't be shining on anything on this night side, so we can get rid of this specularity. So just untick the map, and we can even drag a blank map swatch over the top, which will clear it. We'll clear that map out of there, and then take the glossiness down to 0 and the specularity down to 0. We'll give that another render, and you'll see that that's gotten rid of that specularity on the geometry. And we'll come down to our noise is probably okay to keep. That'll be fine. It'll be more evident, the noise. You don't want the noise to stop as the light moves to dark on that terminator area. And the displacement is fine to keep as well. Now there is a unique map that we need to include here, but we're going to come back to it. It's an opacity map. We're going to actually use that fall off map that I was talking about earlier to use as the opacity to dictate what is visible and what is not through opacity. So that's going to be fine. We can probably bring the self-illumination up to about 10 for now, and just give that a quick render, and we'll see that that's working fine there now. Now this is the actual map that we're going to be creating. Go to a new map swatch, and we're going to click on the standard button here, and we're going to use a composite map. It says keep old material. We don't need to. We can discard that. We'll go OK. And our base map is this material 26, and we can go into it, and it's a standard material. Now what we want to do is grab our Earth map, and with the, we'll just rename our, we'll go day-night mat for material, and then we'll click and drag in one movement the day material into the base material swatch as an instance. And that way, because it's an instance, we can just go to the original and make changes, and it will update automatically in the base material. Now let's apply this material to our object, and at the moment it's just green, and what we can do is come in here and click the show button, or actually in the diffuse we'll click the show in viewport button, and if we render we get that day map, and that's working fine. Now what we want to do though is grab our night map and move it into mat 1 slot as an instance. We'll go OK to that. Now if we render that, it's just the straight night map, because it's overriding, it's compositing it over the top of the base material. But if we go into the night map and we click on opacity radio button here, we'll click on that, we'll come in, we'll use a fall off map type, and we'll go OK, and that brings up this fall off window here, and I'm just going to bring this up here. You'll see at the moment I'm going into the opacity of the night map. At the moment, if I switch on our background, it's invisible in the middle, but it's visible on the outside, because our fall off type is set up to perpendicular and parallel. I can swap the black and white swatches, and you'll see that it'll swap around, and it's falling off to an invisible or non-visible on the outside and visible on the inside. So what we want to do is use the fall off type of shadow and light. And if we use shadow and light, what we can actually do is, if I give that a render now in our viewport, and just come out a little bit on our geometry and rotate our map around a little bit, just so that this North America continent here is in the night portion, and render that, you'll see that we have a daylit portion here on the right, but then we're using our nightlit area here. Our night map is on the left. Now what we want to do is just go into the mix curve and define that curve a little bit. At the moment it's black fading all the way to white throughout the whole distance of the map. But if I bring this up, what we can do is click the add point here, and we've added a point. We're going to add 2 points. Then we'll use our movement tool here, and we're just going to tighten up that fall off, and you'll see that we get this tighter line through here. We'll just soften it just a little bit more, something like that. And now when we render, we get more of a defined line. Now what we're going to need to do is just go back up to the top of the Earth night map and just bring the self-illumination up a little bit more. Let's kick it to 60 in the self-illumination, and we'll render that. And now you can see that we have our lights on the left hand side and our day on the night hand side. Now it's a little bit harsh, so let's soften it a bit by going back into the opacity settings there, and we just want to soften that curve a little bit more. We drag this one out a bit and drag this one out a little bit more, and we'll see how that looks. And I think that's going to work nicely. So there's our day-night composite material that we've created there now, and that's pretty much what it should look like. The day Earth is the base material, and then the night is the first composite.